Good evening, and welcome to the Museum of Science. I am James Wetzel, the Adult Programs Coordinator here at the museum, and I am extremely honored to be introducing tonight's program, Becoming Nicole. Before we get started, please turn off any and all electronic devices, and if you do need to leave the program early, we ask you do so up the steps and through the exit in the rear of the theater. I also want to take this time to thank Jack and Susie Reno and the entire Reno Family Foundation Fund for making this symposium series possible. In addition, we were able to make tonight free due to the generosity of the Lowell Institute, so a massive thank you to them as well. Tonight's program and our guests are extraordinary testaments to the diversity and intricacies of science and human nature that cannot be ignored. In a time where the legal rights of the LGBTQ communities are being questioned, challenged, and revoked by government officials and institutions across the nation, the Maines family have increasingly become leaders within the community. Nicole and Jonas continue to shine as beacons of inspiration to those discovering their own selves while faced with acts of discrimination such as HB2 in North Carolina, which continues to ignite social and public debate. The confidence, authority, and dedication Nicole and Jonas continue to show, and the efforts that they have already contributed to the transgender community continues to inspire me personally, as well as all of the people that they continue to touch with their story and their voice. And amazingly, they've only just finished their freshman year of college, so I'm sure there's so much more to come. As Nicole states in her recent TEDx talk, if you are on this planet, you are a part of the trans story. And through the voices of individuals like Nicole and Jonas, this story will continue to be told and fought for as a pivotal part of humanity's diversity. Now, it is my privilege to introduce an internationally recognized expert and advocate for transgender individuals and the co-founder of the nation's first clinic to treat transgender children, including Nicole. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Dr. Norman P. Spack.
Thank you. When I got started in all this, I had no idea I'd be driving all the way from Brookline to here and hear nothing but transgender, bathroom. It's really quite amazing. Before I get started, I just want to point out somebody who's in the dark right now, but when he comes to the light, you'll see him. Dr. Mitch Rabkin is here. Anybody who knows anything about medicine in Boston knows that the great strength of what then was called the Beth Israel and now the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital is its patient-centered focus. And I, who have had family members as patients and been a patient, and grandchildren born there, can say that it takes a rock to make that happen. And that rock for many, many years was Dr. Rabkin, and I'm so pleased. And I'm a little daunted because you're an endocrinologist. You know. So you may know. You know, you can't be in this field without starting to ask some questions. And we're going to ask a lot of questions tonight. But started to think about, well, how far back do the issues of transgender people go? Well, let's put it this way. It seems to be found in every culture that people don't get their heads cut off for behaving the way they feel. In some cultures, it's absolutely admired, like the Navajo, where people who have this dual identity before they have a firm identity, or people who have disorders of sex development, meaning that they have parts of one gender and parts of the other, are given the highest status and are often involved in such important things as marital disputes, with the idea that, well, they probably know both sides of the issue. Now, in a wonderful journal article as she was departing president of Endocrine Society, Maria New wrote about a pope in the Middle Ages who was discovered at autopsy to be female. And the way they dealt with it from then on was to create a chair that looked a lot like a commode with a cutout in the middle, and it was a job of a senior cardinal to go up through the hole in the chair with his hand to verify that the Pope had testicles. For any of you who saw the movie, The Danish Girl, I'm going to pose a question. Why do you think that episode, that particular episode, took place in the Weimar Republic in Germany between the wars? Well, it took two things to have that happen. Number one, until World War I, with its horrendous shrapnel wounds, there was no such thing as plastic surgery. So the field of plastic surgery grew and flowered to the point that by the time of between the wars, it became literally possible for skilled surgeons who had reconstructed people's everythings from the bombs and blasts to be able to do forms of genital reconstruction. That was the first. And then it also took a public attitude. The Weimar Republic, was the era of cabaret. It was the era of Magnus Hirschfeld, a Jewish physician who, practicing in Berlin, was one of the first sexologists. And he saw people for sexual problems, and he also saw people with gender identity problems, referring them to surgeons. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Danish Girl had seen Dr. Hirschfeld, who had to flee the Nazis, of course, who had two reasons to want to kill him, right? One was his religion, and the other was his crazy ideas about reconstructing people, especially undesirables who were only fodder for the German death machine. So he went to Vichy, where he set up a clinic. He went to London, he set up a clinic. He trained the late Harry Benjamin, who worked until he was 100 years old. And as some of you know, the standards of care for treating transgender people was originally called the Harry Benjamin Standards, because Harry, practicing in a general practice in Times Square, had so many transgender people who were being taken advantage of by charlatans who said they could do this, that, and the other thing for them. And so he set up a standards of care which still are revised, but they go on in his name to this day. I got into this in a somewhat unusual way. It took an N of one. That means when running an adolescent medicine practice, one patient happened to be a 24-year-old Harvard graduate who had never been treated, but who arrived at Harvard and said, he knew his parents never really accepted the fact that, born a female, that he affirmed a male identity, and he called himself Mark, not his birth name. And everyone at Harvard played along with it, including the three roommates, and including the registrar, who, this is 1985 when I saw him, so we're talking early 1980s. The registrar knew there was an issue because he spoke with the senior people at the health service. They said, we got to do something because everything wasn't all computerized then. It would be easy now. But what the registrar did was he brought him in and he said, Mark, I want you to come see me before 2 to 3 weeks before every semester. I want to know every class you're taking. I want to know at what time, and I want to know what teacher. Why? Because the registrar then rewrote the class list, so no professor would say his birth name, which would have been very likely to have been printed out instead. Takes so little to make people feel comfortable, right? Doesn't take a lot. Doesn't surprise me that Harvard has been particularly helpful to trans students. And it has written policies for its university health services that have allowed for care to be provided and covered for over 5 or 6 years now. And that, when it's Harvard University Health Services, that means faculty, and it means students, and it means children of faculty, and employees, and children of employees, a lot of people who can guarantee that they would be cared for and it would be paid for, well before the more recent things. So, what started at Mitch, I'm going to tell you that one of the things that happened was that when I went to the endocrine division at Children's, I discovered that it was common practice and necessary for boards for adult endocrinologists to rotate through the pediatric clinics at Children's, and vice versa. And a number of the people who are now on staff who take care of transgender people got their feet wet coming to our clinic. But so why did, I'm going to ask the question, because I didn't invent any of this stuff. What I did was really get to know the Dutch, who had been doing what I ended up doing a good 10 years before. And why did they take a step that ended up in the kind of treatment that Nicole received, a kind of treatment that we consider to be ideal and still difficult to get for enough people? This came from my dear friend, now retired Louis Gurin, who was the founder of the Dutch clinic for as they say, for transsexual people. It was really for adults. And Dr. Gurin, if you want to know anything medical about this field, just look him up, because he wrote 90% of the articles related to the medical consequences of treatment, et cetera, et cetera. But in this case, what he did, you can imagine how difficult this would be to do today. This is the advantage of Holland. Holland is a small country. Anybody can get to the center for care. And the center provides the care for all the trans people in Holland. And they are on a total national health service, total single-payer plan, that is the government, and everybody is on that plan. There's no going out of plan. There's no private care. This is it. And they don't take people from other countries. So it's a pure population capable of being followed forever. And all that care is free, prepaid for. And so he looked over his life experience with 3,500 patients and asked a question we would have a hard time doing because of the mobility of the U.S. population. Of what did they die? After all, we're in Holland. It's one of the most sexually liberal countries in the world. It has, it cares for their trans people. It respects it apparently, they thought, respected their trans people. It seemed like the ideal place to be if you were trans. So then he looked of what 1,200 of the 3,500 had died. And then he asked why. And they have those records, because all you had to do is look up that central record. And lo and behold, they didn't die of all the things that doctors talk about and worry about, well, hyperlipidemia, or whether they had hypertension, taking testosterone, or whether they had strokes, or high-dose estrogen. No. The overwhelming causes of death were suicide, drug abuse, alcoholism, homicide, homelessness, detachments from family. In other words, they died a psychosocial death, which means their life sucked. And it wasn't a Garden of Eden for them. Life was rough even in Holland. Therefore, Dr. Gorin assembled a team of people, psychologists and pediatric endocrinologists, and said, the problem is we're getting to these people too late. We're getting these people when they have already lived in one life and are being challenged by having to live in another, and the people around them from the first life may not be that particularly supportive to their life in the second gender. And therefore, for many of them, life is no longer worth living. And lest you think this only goes on in Holland, because I'm trying to pre-answer the question, why do we go so actively involved to try to help the kids at a very young age? Well, folks, it goes like this. If you're 16 to 25 years of age and your parents do not accept you for who you really think you are and do nothing to help you find someone who can help them, you have a 45% chance of attempting suicide between the ages of 16 and 25. This is why the NIH came chasing after us saying, do you want a grant? You know? They helped us for 2 or 3 years, then we got a $6 million grant divided among 4 institutions, so the numbers will be high, to try to look at the difference between early treatment and later treatment. But, you know, I wish you were Holland, because we know we'd be able to follow these people for the rest of their lives, because that's what this needs. So they decided, okay, here's the problem. The physical attributes that make it so difficult for some people to adjust are the attributes associated with puberty. Because I'll show you a picture soon of how easy it is for kids to look exactly the same gender if you just dress them that way prior to the onset of puberty. It's almost like recreating ourselves from our prenatal state when we started out as an undifferentiated gonad and didn't know which way it was going to go, how the chromosomes and transcription factors would influence it. And here we are again, kids looking basically the same. And in fact, we could, if we dressed them that way, they could go to whatever bathroom they want and no one would say boo. Maybe that's what we should do, is just make everyone look prepubertal. And then send them wherever we want. But the whole purpose was to use the GnRH analogs, the analogs that actually block puberty at the highest levels between the hypothalamus and the pituitary, which is where pulsatile release of hormones is responsible for puberty and menstrual cycles and everything else related to sex hormones. That's an interesting Boston story, by the way. The first treatment for that was for girls with sexual precocious puberty. where we didn't know why they were getting puberty at 3, 4, 5. What could be worse, right? I mean, everything, including menstrual periods, would happen. And then they'd be this tall because all the growth would have to take place in such a short period of time. So when the GnRH analogs came out, they were the ideal treatment because up until then, high-dose progesterone was being used, and it had side effects. And in a wonderful collaboration between two Harvard institutions that rarely collaborate with each other, the Mass General and the Children's, Bill Crowley and John Krigler together to pooled enough patients to study the use of GnRH analogs. And they made it possible for the Dutch to see that they are safe, because this was done in the 70s, the late 70s. And the girls who were exposed to it shut their periods and everything down immediately. Puberty stopped. For about 7 to 10 years, they were on that drug until they reached age 12. At age 12, the drug was taken away. They went into puberty within 6 months. And then they went into normal menstrual cycles. They went into normal fertility. They've gone into normal motherhood. And nobody has found a damn thing wrong with them. A total success story. So the other thing is that if you started when people are starting puberty, boys at 12 to 14 and girls at 10 to 12, and you started by giving them the hormones of the other sex, well, that's a heavy thing to do to somebody that young. Can you really trust that at that age that they can do something irreversible and develop sexual characteristics of the opposite sex that young? So this buys time. And you don't have to, at least you're dealing with a middle adolescent when you're talking about using the hormones of the affirmed gender. Okay. So this is the 9-year-old I talked about. Genetic male. This could have been Nicole. Maybe we'll have a picture that was you at that age, because by that point you were dressing that way. And I dare you, in clothing, I dare you to tell me that there's any difference between her and any of the other girls at school. But to block her, when she started to go through puberty, she went on the GnRH analog to shut them down, same thing we used with Nicole. And now she's at 15 to 16, and she has a shape. And that shape didn't come just from stopping. Remember, if we had just stopped, these are the Dutch. These are all Dutch patients who have given approval. So this is a Dutch girl at 15, and of course, if we had just stopped everything and not given her female hormones, she would have actually developed male characteristics because she still has male gonads. And here she is at 19. She's already had her surgery. She's done. And I think you would agree she's a lovely-looking young woman. And when I say, she looks female, I'm not just talking about her breasts. I'm talking about the subtle things, the softness of the skin, especially around the face, the body of the hair, and particularly the lack of angularity of the brow, the zygoma, which is the cheekbones, and the mandible, the chin, all of which are so identifiable that a forensic pathologist is capable of picking up a skull and say, this is a male, this is a female. And this doesn't come with birth. This comes with the hormones associated with puberty. So we decided a lot later to put a clinic together. The Dutch trained us. The Dutch gave us their testing methods. And we decided to be as strict as they, because they were having phenomenal success. And they were running 7 to 8 years ahead of us. So we could go, as they say, we could go to school on that putt. That in order to be accepted for pubertal suppression, they had to be in the earliest of puberty, which means a doubling or tripling of testicular size or breast budding. They had to be in counseling with a gender therapist for at least 6 months, because that person had to make the referral and the letter. This isn't easy in many places, and I have many friends who can't treat people because he can't get the support of both custodial parents. And if it's a non-custodial parent who is a problem, we sometimes end up going to court. And there can be no severe psychopathology, but believe me, there's plenty of anxiety, depression, and minor things that are secondary to the non-treated state. So my first patient from overseas came because Jackie at age 12, previously untreated, a genetic male, had been totally abused in her city in Middle England. On top of that, she had had 4 major suicidal attempts, and that was because, in her mind, that the policy of the only program to evaluate and treat trans kids happens to be in London, and their philosophy was no medical treatment until 16, in spite of the fact that they had phenomenally good psychometric testing at age 12. So the kids saw, well, they're never going to treat me if I prove that I'm qualified. Well, Jackie was also a challenge because she had a predicted adult height of 6'5", which is a challenge. They don't play basketball in England. So we started her on analog, but we also, to cut her height down, we treated her with estrogen at 13. And on the far right, she is 18 or 19, and a runner-up, a semifinalist in the Miss England competition. And she ended up being 5'11", and then tweaked me about it because she said she missed out on a modeling contract. They wanted to be 6'1", but then in a wonderful turn of phrase, she said, "But those models are all vacuous," and it wasn't for her. But it really was interesting that no big brouhaha came over the fact that this person who was born genetically male was winning a beauty contest. But it all had to do with one of the judges who said, "But she has more of her standard equipment than anyone else." Okay. This is Nicole at around 2. Do you want to hit the video? Yeah. Now, look at some of the toys. Okay.
All right.
Now, I don't know if this is female as in putting the dress over your head or what, but it always... So, a couple of things that we see in children who are really committed and make a political statement about their gender at a relatively young age is quite commonly, as is the case with, or was the case with Nicole, is attempting to imitate hair, the longer hair of a woman, by wrapping towels around the head, and that was certainly done here. No one encouraged this, and besides, Nicole has a brother who was not doing this at the same time. This is, at what age did we say this was? 3. This is age 3. So you might say, well, you know, it's a boy's haircut and the boy's T-shirt and whatever. But look at the dolls being clutched close to the chest. And remember, he's still going by a male name at that point. This is now 9 years of age. By this point, Nicole may not yet legally had your name become Nicole. They hadn't yet used it at school. But I met them for the first time 2 years behind this, at age 7. It was the first time that I had met them. And I remember quite vividly the male name that was affixed to the medical record at that time, although I'm trying to remember whether you asked me to call you Nicole or not. That was kind of a planning session of what we might do if. And this is the famous picture from the Sunday, December 2011, Boston Globe, above the fold, first, with their story as told by Bella English. Now, if anyone needs an idea, if anyone says it's okay to wait till they're 16 and don't mess around. Well, you know, this is 14. Look at how physically mature for 14 Jonas is, right? He's got a beard, he's got an Adam's apple, he's got prominent cheekbones, mandible, the whole bit, okay? In fact, he may be 14, looks 16. But the point is, that's exactly what Nicole would have looked like had we not done anything. Because what you're seeing on the right is a normal male puberty, albeit a bit early. And on the left, you're seeing an identical twin who had puberty blocked at 12 and has not yet gotten any estrogen, any sex, just on blockade at this point. Although it was just around this time that we added estrogen in. So the Dutch have followed enough kids who've gone through the whole protocol. Blockade at 12, cross-sex steroids around 15, and surgeries all completed at 18. And then, of these 55 patients, about equally divided between genetic males and females, they did a careful psychosocial evaluation of how these kids were doing at 2 to 4 years after completion of all surgeries. How were they? Did they fit Louis Guerin's population? Hell no. These kids were as good or better than psychosocially at that point than a control group of the same age Dutch kids. Okay? So far, it appears that the results are, well, expected, but still phenomenal. So I'm going to call Nicole and Jonas up and engage in a little byplay here. Well, how the hell how are you doing? They just completed their first year of college. Nicole has been speaking at a variety of the GLAAD award ceremony in California. I should say, in deference to the whole family, and this, including Jonas for sure, there was no accident that the family was invited to the White House on something that maybe you don't all know that our president does. And every spring he has a Saturday luncheon for heroes of the GLBT community. And the Maines family was honored, as they were by the ACLU, but that had to do with a bathroom issue in Maine a number of years ago. And well, actually, since I'm digressing, you want to just explain in a nutshell, Nicole, what that was about?
The bathroom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I began my transition when I was in first grade. we decided to do more of a gradual transition rather than sort of like an abrupt thing like that I know a lot of trans kids do. They sort of like burst into school one day, you know, skirt, pearls, heels, purse, hair done, face beat, and everyone's kind of like, what? So we decided to do more of a gradual transition, starting with growing my hair long, wearing pink, and that grew into bathrooms, a name change, skirts, and ending with the use of the multi-stall girls' bathroom. And everything was going really great because we had eased not only myself into it, but also the administration, teachers, and all of the other students at the school. So no one was really like expected to abruptly just sort of understand everything. And it was really great, and everyone was cooperating. And if we had a question, we could all deal with it together. The only problem with the gradual transition, though, was that a new student wouldn't have been there for sort of that ease into it, and that's what happened. A student had come in 4th grade. He wasn't in my class, so it wasn't a deal. But in 5th grade, he was, found out that I was trans, and he told his grandfather, who was part of a, you know, radical right, religious-y group. And so that wasn't really okay with him. And so on the behalf of his grandfather, he followed me into the bathroom to sort of make a statement, carrying on his back the weight of a lawsuit threatened by this group. So to cut a long story short, they pulled me out of the bathroom. And they were just like, you know what, we're just going to remove the problem. We're going to put you in like this private staff bathroom. And, you know, they sort of tried to glitz it up by saying that there was even like my own private mirror to like play up my vanity or something. And of course it was in a staff bathroom, so the mirror was too high for a 5th grader, and I should have known that. I should have known that. So that bathroom sucked. And on top of that, you know, it was a complete isolation from all of my friends. And, you know, after a while, I'd really, like, overheard my parents talking a lot about how unfair it was that I was being punished. And, you know, I sort of agreed. And so, you know, in my own little, like, 5th grade rebellious sort of action, I started using the girls' bathroom again, and everyone was fine until it happened again. And again, I was in the principal's office with her giving me, like, a look and saying I wasn't supposed to be in there. And so from that point on, they'd given me a bodyguard to follow me around, make sure that I used, you know, their isolation chamber, and basically keep me in a place where I couldn't cause trouble. And so, you know, for obvious reasons, this wasn't working out. And we gave the school every opportunity to help us, to work with us, just like they had done for the past 5 years. But in 6th grade, we ended up having to leave that school because they just weren't cooperating. And we ended up filing suit against them on grounds of unlawful discrimination based on my gender identity. And that went to the
State Supreme.
First it went to the state court, and we lost. But then we appealed, thank you, and it went up to the state Supreme Court, where after about, 5 years?
Sure.
After 5 years, it finally won. It finally won after 5 years of being in court. And that was the first case like that in the country, actually. And so what it did, because everyone was really afraid, and this wasn't like a new thing. This was something that's been happening to trans kids everywhere. But the problem is courts didn't want to, you know, be that first to sort of draw a line in the sand. But fortunately, we had the right people. We were there at the right time. And they did the right thing, and so that set a precedent.
Nicole, I remember being at a hearing in Augusta, a subcommittee of the legislature, a joint committee, that was taking up an issue that was brought by one legislator trying to amend the then quite liberal public accommodations rules in the state that would give principals and restaurant owners the right to say to somebody, you have to use, sounds familiar, the bathroom of your biological sex. Do you remember that? Because
A little, and it's actually happening again in Maine right now. They're trying to get enough signatures.
Well, I just want the audience to know that up to that point, as I recall, you weren't completely out to everybody. You were selective as to who you would tell.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of us had gone up and gotten our 3 minutes. The lead person, Jennifer Levi, got 10. And then the rest of us got like 3 minutes. And I remember you said to your father that all these people are really trying their best, but they can't do it. I can. And you made it your business to go and visit just about all the legislators in Maine. And this is what they saw. And suddenly, for the first time, it hit them, right? It hit them. If I had a daughter and they said I had to send her into the men's room, where is the risk here? Right? They think that my daughter is likely to prey on other women. You know, this is the kind of reasoning you get from someone like, I'm sorry, I have to say his name, Paul McHugh, Dr. Paul McHugh, who claims that he's never seen a trans person who convinced him that that person had a different gender identity. And he says all of the male to females are really just gay men who found a unique way to attract men.
They've got me pegged, darn. My secrets!
So, in doing so, however, she basically outed herself because that testimony was so potent that it was written up and her name was included. But she felt she had to do it. It was a pretty courageous thing to do.
Thank you.
How's college, Jonas? How is it without her? How is it without her constant chatter in the background?
Careful.
It's peaceful, Norm. You know, it's really interesting because we've been together for so long, and college, like you said, it was really the first time that Nicole and I were apart for more than, a couple days or so, or when someone went on a trip. And it was a chance for me to sort of have my own identity beyond being Nicole's brother, which through high school had sort of been the title that developed with me, both at school where we shared the same friends and everyone sort of associated us together, and also on a state and national level where all these speaking events began to pop up, and I was sort of becoming identifiable as Nicole's twin brother, and going to college alone was, I don't want to say an opportunity, but it was a moment where I was able to to be Jonas, and people sort of picked that up. And that's sort of a phenomenon that a lot of twins have, that ability to be sort of become your own self. And I think it was magnified for me because on such a grand scale, I became associated to you, and it was really an interesting experience for me. Of course, with the book coming out, we have one bookstore in in my college town. It's a very small town. We have one bookstore, and Becoming Nicole went up right in the front window. So that...
I'm always with you, Jonas.
Yeah, that sort of idea of individuality did not last for me. But no, it was very nice to be able to come into my own, and college was also a chance for me to sort of discover things about myself beyond advocating for transgender rights and equality. It was a good chance for me to sort of come into my own, I guess.
Since you were both at state schools within the same state of Maine, did you run into kids Jonas, who were aware of who you were?
Yes, I was. Actually, funny story. I have a friend. He and I were hanging out one day, and there were a bunch of us in the room. We were in my dorm room, and he decides to play the game. Oh, let's Google our names. And so he Googles himself. Nothing comes up. And he Googles my roommate. Nothing comes up. And he Googles my name. And at this point, none of us are really paying attention to what he's saying. He's just kind of reading off random things. And he gets to me and he goes, "Oh shit, you're famous!" So I've had a couple moments where yeah, it comes up. But yeah, for the most part, I was surprised because it's not something that really, but until the book, a lot of people didn't really pick up on it. And
but she's not in view at
No.
the same school. It would be quite different if
yeah, absolutely. It would be. I think it would be something way bigger. Especially, I go to such a small school. I think it'd be something that's way more in the forefront of my daily life. But no, it's I think it's a nice balance. I think it's something that people recognize every now and then, but it's not. It doesn't dominate sort of who I am.
Nicole, one of the things that my colleagues and I talk about when we now have a special interest group of the Pediatric Endocrine Society, and we were talking about, well, has anyone really studied what it's like for these kids to be forcibly delayed puberty? You know it, the reasons why, all that, but what was it like to be in kind of Never Land for a couple of years?
Well, I think being a twin, it was nice not having, especially for my parents, not having two kids go through puberty together at the same time. No, and I think it was, just like on a psychological level, it was very nice not dealing with all those shifting hormones at that particular moment in time for me personally. Just because so much was going on. I was already in a really weird place because after the move, I had to hide my transgender status from my new school after being out for 5 years. And so that was really rough for me already. So I think timing-wise, it was definitely convenient. But the actual process itself, I didn't have any problem with it at all. It didn't feel strange to me. I just think I felt very normal.
One of the other side of it is that when you start from such a low hormonal level from being blocked, that giving you any hormones, and in this case the estrogens, some people say it hits like a ton of rocks.
When I started estrogen, I definitely got moody.
You were moody before that.
Well,
Just want to get that straight.
well, what can I say? You saw the video. I was already a diva. But, no, I don't know. I think when I started estrogen, I don't know if I particularly noticed it hit me very hard. And I think that's because we sort of started gradually and sort of slowly went up in dosage. But I don't really recall remembering any sudden changes for me personally.
The other thing is many of the kids talk about, in retrospect, that, you know, until things are all done, it's very hard to be as involved in dating and any romantic relationships until, you know, in that study from Holland, yes, they came out fine psychosocially, but they all admitted that it took until they had finished with the surgery, you know, for them not to be gender dysphoric anymore.
Absolutely.
You know? So going off to college is for many, for some, the beginning of dating, and for some, a continuation of something that that may have started a couple years before.
You know, for me, acceptance for myself, and I talked about it in my TEDx talk, it came a little bit before surgery, and I think that was personally what made that decision to do it harder, because I think acceptance comes from being in an environment that allows you to accept yourself. Because, you know, I think self-acceptance is really hard to do when you aren't accepted, you know, from an outside perspective. And Jonas and I went to a private school that was incredibly accepting. And yes, like, acceptance at home is like where it starts. You need it. But, you know, if you're just accepted at home, it's not enough. Because if you're going, you know, to school all the time and you're not accepted there, then okay, well, I guess you can be accepted in the evening, but in the morning, you're going to be a freak again, just so you know. So being accepted in both places gave me sort of that ability to become comfortable with myself, and so that came probably around my senior year, and that's when I started, you know, trying to get into the dating pool, but it was still really weird. So, but I mean, I guess dating's weird for anybody. But, and I think after, you know, deciding to have surgery was hard because I was afraid that gender dysphoria would come back, you know, after just having gotten to a place where I had sort of accepted myself. But it was definitely the right decision because those feelings of any gender dysphoria completely gone. I feel, you know, I'm coming up on a year now, actually, in August, since surgery, and it kind of feels like it's been a lot longer than a year. It's really weird, but it's like I'm in a really good place with everything, and so dating is it's that much easier. So, I don't know if that's what you were looking for.
No,
but
it's
I realized halfway through that I was ranting, and I said, well, while I'm here.
Are you maintaining friendships from high school, as in from home? Or, you know, Maine's a pretty big state, but not that big.
Well, most of it's occupied by trees. So.
Yep. Yes. Actually, we've, you know, being home after college finished up has given us a chance to reconnect with a lot of friends from high school. And it's been really interesting. You know, I think part of the reason they stayed so close was because they were, you know, I think they were just so understanding of who Nicole was, and our personal struggles, and that, you know, I think that didn't mean anything to them really, in the sense that, you know, that didn't define who we are to them. You know, they looked beyond that, and they saw us for just being, you know, other kids in the school. And I think that says a lot about not only them in the school environment, but also a standard which I think all we should all strive to meet, is looking beyond that to seeing who, you know, transgender students and their families are beyond being transgender.
Well, also my friends were our friends, we had the same friend group. Our friends were so fundamental in me getting to that place of self-acceptance. So, I think not staying in touch with them at this point would be almost
impossible.
Oh, almost impossible. My two closest friends were actually mentioned in the book, Austin and Lexi. And they've been incredible. Actually, Austin's coming to my college next year. He's transferring. So we're going to, sort of resume our whirlwind that we had in high school. So they've been really great. And I think having that close circle of friends is just so important when you're going through something as complicated as, hormone therapy and just gender dysphoria in general, having people that you can talk to and understand you, regardless of whether or not they're trans. Because my friends, it was very yes and coming out to them. It wasn't that big of a deal, and we all sort of got to that place where me being trans, wasn't my defining factor, but it was definitely something we could all joke about, especially, for instance, we went to the mall one time, and Austin had a new boyfriend, and we were all, getting to know him, and he said something, and I saw this opportunity, and they all knew it was coming, because they saw this look in my eye, and I looked right at him, and I said, "Are you saying that because I'm trans?" And he just went white as a sheet. And then they all broke up in laughter. So having good friends is amazing. They're all incredible.
Except for your public notice, you really would have the opportunity of never telling anybody except some very special, close people about you. I see kids, for example, who happen to be trans who become very active about GLBT issues when they get to college. But actually, I would have to say that's the minority, because if the kids are very much completed in terms of treatment, whatever, many of them just want to blend in. So to what extent is your career so far a potential impediment to whether people will know you as Nicole Maines, who happens to be trans, which at least is nicer than Nicole Maines, the trans.
Yeah, exactly.
But in any case, at least for people to associate you with this part of you.
Well, I think at this point, having done as many things as we've all done, I think we've all been given a certain platform. And for me personally, I do intend to continue to use that platform to keep speaking out and to keep making a difference. Because, until we're at that point where, we'll all tell our kids that, there was a time when they didn't want me to use the women's bathroom. And until we get to that point where they're like, wait, what? Then the work we're not done. We're not. We have so much more work to do. And so I think so long as I have this platform and as long as I have the opportunity to keep working, that's what I'm going to do. And as far as, my identity being defined as trans, I'm definitely doing other things besides being the trans person. Because everybody's not just their gender. No one's just something. As humans, we all have a billion other things that define us. And so I think I'm also working on, making sure that other people know I do other stuff. So.
So that means that the two of you aren't going to run for president and vice president.
I think that would just be too complicated.
I'd go to Canada.
Well, would you be the president or the vice president?
I'd be in Canada.
Should we do the mics?
Cool. Q&A.
Oh,
Let's do it.
come on up.
My mom.
Kelly is a self-effacing person. I remember I needed someone to speak with me who happened to live near Portland, and it was at a medical school, and she said, I don't do the speaking in the family, Wayne does. Well, she took questions, and she stood up from that side, and she just knocked the house down. I mean, it was like, where have you been? So anyhow.
I hope I don't disappoint today. Then.
You want to expand on any of the things that were discussed here?
Well, I think we're just a normal family, and I think we just got really lucky that things happened the way that they did, and that I have two really awesome kids, and that there's a Dr. Spack in this world, because I couldn't have made it without you. So I haven't actually read the book. I read the book when we were working on the book, but
We were there. We were there for all of it.
Well, for me, it's really hard to read the book because I cannot explain how hard, how much pain I was in going through that whole thing, and not knowing. Now I'm sitting here today, and everything's great and everything's fine, but I can't tell you how many times I didn't think we'd ever come anywhere near this. This is like, I couldn't have even dreamed of this. But to think that they would be okay, both of them would be okay, I had no idea. I mean, there was a whole section of time when Wayne was not even on board. So I didn't know, and Dr. Spack wouldn't even see us if Wayne wouldn't have. It was very, very hard, but...
We prepare to take questions from the audience. I know there are people with mics. And would you direct the question at a particular individual?
Yes, actually, I'd love Jonas and Mom.
Kelly. I'm also known as Kelly.
Kelly, could you talk some about the support you needed going through this, and also any advice you have having supported Nicole for those of us who might want to be, or in the future or right now are in a position where we will have people somewhere in our lives who need the kind of support she does? What advice you would give, whether it's in school or teachers or just friends, about how to support and make it as safe as you can. But also, I assume you all needed some support too, because it's not just Nicole, but it's a whole family thing, as you said. I don't know, is that articulate enough a question?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I like to think that I was always watching for both of them, but I do think it was hard to make sure that Jonas didn't get lost in that whole shuffle. And I think anyone who has a child that has any kind of special needs, the other kids do kind of get shuffled in the back. And I hope he doesn't feel that way, but it probably did happen sometimes.
Oh, it did.
So I can't make up for it, though. You just can't make it up.
I have $20.
Jonas Maines.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's absolutely true. You know, any time there are multiple children and one child needs special care, as important and vital as that is, there is this other aspect to it where it's very easy for a young child to kind of have that "what about me" feeling. And that's, you know, I don't think it's because I don't want to say it's like a jealous or selfish thing. I think it's natural for the child to want to feel the same amount of value as their sibling. And, you know, growing up, and especially in middle school and high school is where I think I felt it the most. I understood. There was never a time where I was like, she doesn't deserve this. It was always, no, I understood this is what Nicole needed, and under no circumstances did I want that to go away. I think there were times, especially with my dad, where it felt like I wasn't good enough for him. And I think that's, my advice to parents with siblings in any situation like this, whether it be with a transgender child or not, would be, of course, always give your child whatever they need. Always. That is not negotiable. But also, it's hard, but I think just giving that extra support, it's not.
I think, too, to add to what you said earlier, or asked earlier, is I think, and I'm speaking for you now.
That's fine.
I don't think Nicole would have done quite as well without Jonas, because
no.
he was a constant support to her, constant.
Well,
Always watching her, always had her back, always, I wouldn't say, I hope I didn't put that pressure on him to make him think he had to go to school and protect Nicole. But we're a family, so we kind of do that for each other. And maybe it's because they're twins or just siblings or whatever it is. He's always been there for her. He's been a great support system. And for me, as far as counseling, when Nicole used to get her counseling, and this may be in the book, so stop me if you've heard it before. But she had a counselor before we started seeing, around the same time we seen you. And we'd go in, and the first half hour was my time. I did not know what I was doing. I didn't know because the counselor kept telling me, oh no, he's just gay. He's just going through a phase right now. I've had several clients like this, and they all grew up. And I said, but wait a minute, wouldn't you rather be gay than transgender? At least people kind of get that one, but they don't get this at all. And so for me, it worked out really well because I was able to go in and say, oh my God, my life's falling apart. And then also say, okay, here's what's going on. What do you think? And we could bounce these ideas off of each other. And without her and without you, I can't express enough. I couldn't do it alone. There was no way. I had to have a support system of people with reasonable minds that could help me through all of this. And that was certainly how but I don't think I slept for about 18 years. I don't think I slept because I didn't know what was going to happen. I know, is there another shoe going to drop tomorrow? Is something, I'm going to, is someone going to be dead? I thought that so many times. It was...
No, and I think, that goes into the second part of the question, advice-wise, is definitely, I think with family members, it is absolutely vital to take it upon yourselves to educate yourselves regarding the issue, because your family member is going to be scared, and they're going to be confused, and they're going to be angry, and they're going to be sad, and they're going to immediately look to the family for support, and it is the responsibility and the obligation of the family to be there for that person. And
Jonas, I don't know if you felt this, but I always felt like I was doing this a lot. What do you say about my kid? What'd you say about my kid? Back off. I always felt like I had to protect her because I always was getting questions thrown at me. Why is your daughter named Wyatt? It's a family name. It's a family name. So, and you must have seen a lot of that yourself at the school.
Especially at school. There was a lot of times where students would be too afraid to ask the trans kid what being transgendered was. So I would often get approached by other students. They'd be like, so...
What's that?
Is your sister a boy or a girl?
Or like, what's going on?
Yeah, and
I've got 5 minutes. Explain the whole thing.
And it would often be like I would be going to class, or like I would be in the bathroom, and so
I need to go.
Yeah, and I would. And I was like probably 9 or 10 myself, and I had no idea what it meant either. So I was like, we'll get through it together, man. I'll give you my best shot, and then we'll sort of piece it together. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll call you when I find out.
Yeah, it was really confusing for me. I didn't have all the answers, and then I was being approached by a lot of kids who expected me to.
And it was confusing for all of us because, again, now it looks so simple, but back then, I would go online and there was no information. And what you did find, you didn't want to find because that wasn't what you were hoping that your baby was going to grow up to do. And that's not what transgender people grow up to do. But online it is.
Well,
so
I just want the audience to understand that forget about the fact that they're identical twins. That makes them unique in of itself. But we're not seeing a lot of people coming in because their child is at age 1, 2, or 3 is literally behaving in a totally cross-gender way and is being consistent about that, and who actually go on to continue to express that gender as puberty hits. So it's more common for us to see kids a bit older, and we don't actually even consider kids definitely trans until the time of potential treatment, because that's based on the data that prior to puberty, a lot of kids vacillate with respect to experimenting with gender roles. But kids who say who reach puberty and insist that this is their gender identity, they're almost certainly transgender and almost certainly will never go back the other way. Which is why the Dutch and we do not have kids who desist.
Well, I was just going to add to that at that time, too, when the kids are in first grade and stuff, people are starting to ask why your son's wearing pink and dressing like a girl and carrying the Kim Possible lunchbox. So, but you don't want to pigeonhole them in, okay, if you're going to dress that way, you're going to be transgender. That's the end of it. We're done. You can't do it that way. You got to give them that space. And that, I think, for Jonas and I was probably the hardest part. When parents would come to me and say, what's up with Wyatt? I'd say, Wyatt likes girl stuff. I don't know why. And we were friends with everybody in town for a while there because I was explaining it to everybody. But that you want to make, that's all I cared about. I got to make allies. I got to make sure they're safe wherever they go. And that's exhausting. It's really exhausting.
Well, I just want to say, I just want to take a moment and appreciate those two, because I don't think there's a thing that they could have done better. Stay humble.
Jonas wants us to move on to another question.
Well, I just wanted to, something you were saying earlier about how, it's really the family's obligation to support each other. I wanted to add that, that's hard to do when when we were starting, there was, like what you were saying, there was no information. And that's why the education is so important and fundamental for people to have before a transgender person comes into their life. And that's what the whole, if you're on the earth, you're part of the trans story thing is about. Because you don't know when a trans person is going to come into your life. I bet you $1 million if you told my father, a year before I was born, that he was going to have a transgender, daughter, he would have, laughed in your face. And then, guess what, Dad? Sorry. That's why it's so fundamental for you to be prepared, because it's not fair to the child to, have somebody, to have to wait. The world shouldn't have to catch up. They should already be there.
When we started the GEMS Clinic in 2007, we were the first in North America to have the program that the Dutch had started through, as I explained, unique personal connection. But right now, it's only 10 years and there are 60 programs. Unfortunately, they're almost all in blue states, which shouldn't surprise you. So there are very large segments of the country where a kid, remember, this is a random phenomenon. I'm convinced it's in the brain, and I'm convinced that it is not influenced by external factors. So it's just as likely. I mean, I've seen people from Kansas. I've seen people from the Mormon faith who've been kicked out. I've seen Orthodox Jews, and on and on. But that means that this has to go on. You know, we used to say, how many people are trans in America? And I remember this distinctly from med school, that someone came back with a term, a figure of 1 in 10,000. And then I looked up and I saw that there were 10,000 operations. 10,000 people had had surgery. And that's how they got to such a ridiculous number. Well, if there are 1 in 10,000, I don't know why Brookline High School, a school of 2,400 kids, has 4 or 5 trans kids in it. Okay? And so in other words, the more you have an environment where people can thrive, obviously the more people are going to come forward and the numbers will shift. The other interesting thing is, when you look at people under age 21, well, over age 21, the numbers always seem to accentuate 3 times as many people going from male to female as from female to male. But I think that statistic's ridiculous and probably just reflects biases in terms of when people can do things. And do we really know whether the person who is female to male is actually, whether we're getting gay people, gay females, as opposed to people who affirm a male identity? So I think it's at least 1 in 1,000, and it's probably closer to 1 in 500.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess this is to Nicole and Dr. Spack. So I feel like a lot of the discussion has been framed in terms of the sort of gender binary, that you're either aiming at an ideal male or an ideal female sort of archetype. And from my kids and the transgender community that they have gotten me in contact with, I have a perception that there's a sense of a broad spectrum that a lot of people have, that some people really are not necessarily aiming for one of those 2 endpoints. And I'm just kind of curious to hear both of you say something about the spectrum.
I am so pleased you asked that, because it right now represents one of the biggest challenges that we have. And of course I tend to talk about what I know, or what I can do. And it's probably because, the difference is that when we see kids like Nicole, they're very often dragging their parents into the clinic. When we're now seeing people who are, I call the term gender fluid, I just can't say gender queer, it's just cultural. That a person has not truly defined their gender. Now, I know that I've seen people like that, some of whom ultimately do find a place for themselves, but they don't necessarily have to. But this I know, is that this is a situation where the parents come in dragging someone who says, why are you bringing me into a doctor? And the parents are saying, essentially, just make them trans. I just want to know what pronouns to use. And so, since all I do when I see people like that is say, we're here for you if there's anything we can do. There may come a time when there are people who go through a gender fluidity until they find a place where they fit. And if not, be happy.
I think for me, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know anything of the medical things regarding gender fluidity or gender neutrality. All I can do is provide a commentary on, the cultural and familial aspects of it. And I think, when you have a child who's expressing that, they don't fall, on this line or this end of the spectrum, and that they're somewhere in the middle, I say, cool. I mean, we don't give kids enough credit. They're smarter than we think they are. They're not going to steer themselves wrong when it comes to their own identity. We just have to trust that they know who they are, because, we know ourselves best. Something that I say is that it's okay if you don't understand something. Like, that's fine. It's human nature not to understand everything, because, we're not all-knowing. And that's okay, but what's important is you can educate yourself, or you can be educated on your own time. Just the most important thing is to respect it on everybody else's time, and especially in this case on your child's time. And so I think just trust that they know who they are.
All right, so we have our last question here.
Thank you. I have a question for Kelly, the mom, and I hope I'm not minimizing this at all. Having a trans kid, whether having a trans kid or having a kid with ADD, is incredibly difficult for the parents. And if the couple cannot agree on, never mind the treatment, but even on the diagnosis, that's so hard. I was wondering if that was your experience. And then my second part is, for those parents out there who have that problem, what advice would you give them?
Well, we did have that problem because Wayne wasn't on board, but I think I'm pretty bossy. So I ended up getting my way, but I also did my research. I didn't just go, well, Wayne, she's transgender, and that's that. I really did a lot of work. I mean, Dr. Spack and the counselors and other people that I met along the way, pediatricians, I did my research. And so it was really hard for him to argue with me about it because I knew what I was talking about as much as I could at that time. So I think if you got to put your own feelings aside, and you got to think about what's going to be best for the kid. And even though you might have a cultural bias about something, no matter what it is, you've still got to surround yourself with some professionals that can help you do what's right for the kid. You can't let your feelings get involved in it. And it is hard to go, like I said, I would have people come to me on the playground and go, why is your daughter named Wyatt? There's scary things that you have to do and talk about, but you got to do them because in the long run, you can't abandon the kid. You can't make them suffer because the two of you can't get along. And I think in the end, that's where Wayne and I ended up coming back together. He finally realized that he may not understand this, but that's his problem. And he needed to work it out, and he did. And the book, actually, after it was written, and I fought it all the way because I'm a private person. But when it's done, I realized it was really a book of transition for both Nicole and for Wayne, because he really changed so much through that book. And I think we did too, Jonas, but we just kind of always got it, in a way, Well, I didn't get it. I didn't go, oh, yes, that's transgender. It wasn't that. But we just accepted that there were going to be something that we didn't expect in this world. And for Wayne, that was very difficult. I got 2 boys, so we're going to go do our hunting thing. We're going to,
play baseball.
To be fair, I don't go hunting with him either.
And to be fair, we did play catch with him, and I did hit a home run better than Jonas.
And she was in heels.
And I was in heels.
One time I look outside, and there's Nicole in a skirt and heels, and she's helping Wayne clean the turkey.
Hey.
So you don't know what no kid should have to go through this at all. But if you have to, you've got to at least have your parents that love you. And to me, that was the bottom line right there. There was no way these kids were ever going to leave that house thinking that they didn't have somebody that loved them. Because I do. Sometimes I'm all they got, as yourself. Sometimes your mom's the only thing you got. And you got to be able to have that. So I think that's kind of where he got on board after that.
Well, what an amazing and important conversation. Thank you, Dr. Spack, Nicole, Jonas, and Kelly, for sharing your story with us tonight. Thank all of you for joining us. The evening is not over quite yet. We invite all of you to join us for a reception one floor down, where you will be able to pick up your own copy of the book, Becoming Nicole, and have it signed by Nicole and Jonas as well. And we are also so fortunate to have several local LGBTQ organizations present as well. They all have informational tables down there and representatives, so please engage them, learn about their work, and continue this important conversation. Thank you.